Terran Vox wiped the sweat from his brow as sparks flew around the repair bay. The space station Orbital 1 groaned under the heat of the red star outside. It was routine maintenance for Terran, fixing the power conduits that hummed like nervous hearts. He liked the quiet hum of machinery, it made him feel steady. But today something felt wrong. He froze for a moment. Among the usual alarms and whistles he heard it. A soft, pitiful cry. It was faint, almost like someone was calling for help, but it had a strange, high-pitched quality, almost musical. Terran frowned. The bay was supposed to be empty except for him and the crew on maintenance rotations. Probably just a trapped animal from cargo, muttered Terran, but the sound made his chest tighten. He couldn't ignore it. His tools clanged as he grabbed a portable scanner and headed toward the source. Warning. Reactor overheating in Sector 7, the station's AI announced. Red lights flashed, and the heat shields hissed as automated safety doors started closing. The usual calm of Orbital 1 turned chaotic in seconds. Workers ran, carrying their tools, shouting over the alarms. Terran's first instinct was to run too. Everyone did. But the cry didn't stop. It was small, scared, helpless. And somehow, Terran felt it inside him, more than the heat, more than the smoke. He ran toward the sound. Flames licked the edges of the hallway as the fire barriers activated. The heat was intense, but Terran had been through worse. He knew he had to keep moving. Every step was a risk, but the sound pulled him forward like a thread he could not cut. The cry led him to a cargo pod. Its doors had warped in the heat, leaving only a small crack. Terran knelt, sweating, panting. He saw a tiny shape inside. At first he thought it was some exotic pet, but then it moved. The creature had scales that shimmered faintly in the firelight, small wings that quivered, and eyes that glowed with fear. It was a hatchling, a baby dragon. Terran swallowed hard. He had never seen a dragon alive, let alone one so small and fragile. Its mouth opened again, making that same high, soft cry. The flames reflected in its eyes, and Terran felt a strange warmth in his chest. He couldn't leave it there. He pried the pod doors open with his crowbar, feeling the heat biting his gloves. The dragon's small body shook as Terran lifted it. It tried to flap its tiny wings but fell back against his chest. Its crying softened, and for the first time Terran noticed the smell, a mix of smoke and something sweet, almost like burnt caramel. Behind him the fire barriers were closing. He had only seconds. He wrapped his suit over the hatchling, shielding it as best he could. The flames danced around him, hot and relentless. But Terran kept moving. Step by step he ran toward the emergency exit. The scanner beeped wildly. Heat readings were off the charts. Anyone else would have stopped. But Terran didn't stop. He felt the hatchling's heartbeat against his own, tiny and rapid. It made him feel alive in a way he hadn't in years. Finally he burst through the emergency doors. Smoke hit his face, making him cough. Other workers froze, staring at him wide-eyed. In his arms the dragon hatchling blinked up at him, safe for now. Is it alive?" someone asked. Terran nodded, his chest heaving. "Yeah, it's alive. We can't leave it behind." The hatchling stirred, snuggling into the folds of Terran's suit. Its warmth and quiet trust made him feel something he hadn't felt in a long time, purpose. He looked back at the fire behind him, at the red glow of the reactor. It didn't seem as frightening now. Somehow, having the dragon in his arms made him braver. Other species on the station started to notice. A few aliens whispered, pointing at Terran. He could hear them wondering why a human would run into fire for a tiny creature. Some shook their heads, confused. But Terran didn't care. The only thing that mattered was the soft whimper of the hatchling and the way it had looked at him with wide, trusting eyes. He carried it to the medical bay, where nurses and doctors prepared to take the hatchling for care. Terran hesitated as the dragon tucked its head into his chest. He realized with a strange pang of emotion that he didn't want to let go. But he also knew the little creature needed safety, not a mechanic bay full of sparks and heat alarms. A nurse gently lifted the hatchling from Terran. It gave a tiny chirp as if saying goodbye, and Terran felt his chest tighten. He wiped his hands on his suit, trying to shake the feeling. But when he turned away he noticed the way the fire alarms still flashed, how the heat slowly began to subside. And he realized something. The fire hadn't just tested his courage, it had changed him. For the first time, Terran understood something about humans that others often overlooked. They ran toward danger when it mattered, not because they were reckless, but because they could feel what others could not. And in that moment, holding the tiny dragon, he felt the fire inside him match the fire outside. A quiet, unyielding determination. The day ended not with destruction but with whispers. Across the station, species started talking about what had happened. Humans had done something unexpected. Something brave. Something strange yet beautiful. Terran left the medical bay, hands empty, heart full. He didn't know yet what the dragon hatchling's name was, or what this meant for the future. But he knew one thing clearly: nothing in his life would ever feel the same again. And somewhere deep inside he smiled, knowing that sometimes, running through fire was the only way to save what truly mattered. Terran sat on the edge of the med bay bench, watching as nurses carefully examined the small dragon hatchling. Its scales shimmered softly under the sterile lights, glowing with shades of amber and green. The little creature looked up at him with big round eyes, blinking slowly. Terran reached out a hand and it nuzzled his palm. "You're lucky," said Nurse Lila Trent, adjusting her scanner. "Most creatures that small don't survive the station fire." Terran shrugged, though he didn't feel lucky. He felt tired, every muscle in his body aching from running through the heat and smoke. But looking at the hatchling he felt something else too, a strange warmth that made his chest tighten. "It wasn't luck," he said softly. "It needed me. I had to go." The nurse raised an eyebrow. "You ran into fire for a creature you just found? Humans do strange things sometimes." Terran smiled faintly, watching the hatchling stir. "Maybe not strange," he said. "Necessary." As the medical staff worked, the hatchling moved closer to him, curling against his chest. Its small body radiated a subtle warmth that seemed to make the room calmer. Even the heat sensors in Terran's suit, which had been off the charts during the fire, now read steady and normal. Somehow being near the hatchling felt stabilizing. Outside the med bay, the station AI broadcasted an alert. "All personnel remain calm. Fire barriers are stable. Reactor temperatures returning to normal." But Terran barely noticed. His focus was on the hatchling, which blinked slowly, almost as if it trusted him without question. He couldn't explain why, but he felt a strange connection. Something inside him had shifted, something he hadn't realized existed before. "Hey," said Lila, leaning down. "What do you want to do with it? The dragon representatives will want it returned soon." Terran hesitated. The idea of handing the hatchling over felt wrong. It wasn't just a creature, it was alive, scared, and now it trusted him. I don't know yet," he admitted. Before anyone could answer, a soft hum filled the room. The hatchling's eyes widened, and Terran felt the air around them vibrate slightly. He looked at the monitors. The readings were unusual, energy patterns he didn't understand. The AI system blinked warnings that made no sense. What is that?" asked Lila. I think it's the hatchling," Terran said slowly, still holding it. He noticed the tiny wings fluttering, releasing a soft glow that interacted with his suit. Heat and energy readings stabilized even more. It was as if the creature's presence made everything around it calmer, safer. The nurse stepped back, confused. Is this normal?" Terran shook his head. "No. Nothing about this is normal." He smiled though. "But maybe it doesn't have to be." Hours passed. The fire outside had long cooled, the alarms silenced, and the station felt almost peaceful. But Terran noticed that he no longer felt the same fatigue. He wasn't sure if it was adrenaline or something else, but the warmth from the hatchling made him feel stronger, sharper, more aware. As the evening lights dimmed, Terran carried the hatchling to a quiet maintenance bay. He set up a temporary space with blankets and small energy emitters to keep the dragon warm. The hatchling explored slowly, tilting its head and sniffing at every object. It chirped softly, a sound that made Terran's chest ache with a strange joy. "You're a brave little one," he said, watching it. "More than anyone here knows." The hatchling turned toward him and chirped again, then flapped its tiny wings, almost as if it were thanking him. Terran chuckled. "Yeah, I get it. You don't need words." That night, Terran couldn't sleep. He stayed in the bay, keeping an eye on the hatchling. Every so often it would nuzzle him, and each touch made him feel changed. Something about the fire, the danger, and the creature's trust had awakened something inside him he hadn't noticed before. By morning, the station's security and medical teams were already buzzing about the fire miracle. Aliens from other sections of Orbital 1 came to see what had happened. They whispered to one another, curious about the human who had risked everything for a tiny creature. Terran ignored the attention. He focused on the hatchling, who now walked around with surprising confidence, exploring the small bay as if it had always belonged there. Its scales caught the early light, reflecting tiny flashes across the walls. "Sir," said one of the alien observers, a tall blue-skinned creature named Vorek, "it is unusual for your species to act with such instinctive courage." Terran glanced at him. I didn't think about species or rules. I just heard something crying. Vorak tilted his head, curious. Your logic is not logical. Terran smiled faintly. Maybe some things don't need logic. He watched the hatchling flap its tiny wings, wobbling but determined. Some things just need someone to care. By midday, the dragon representatives arrived. They were serious, elegant, and distant. Their eyes widened slightly when they saw the hatchling alive and healthy, sitting calmly in Terran's arms. For a moment they said nothing, studying both human and creature. You saved it, said one elder dragon, voice soft but commanding. Why? Terran thought carefully. Because it was scared. Because no one else did. The elder dragon's eyes narrowed, not in anger but in surprise. They were not used to this kind of answer. In dragon culture, survival was calculated, trust was earned over years, and humans were considered reckless. Yet here was a human, standing calmly, having done exactly what no one expected. The hatchling chirped, nudging Terran's chest again. He looked down and smiled. Don't worry. We're fine. The elders whispered among themselves. They did not fully understand, but they were beginning to see that this human had something unique. A kind of bravery and empathy that could not be measured by fire or rules. Terran set the hatchling down in the temporary nest and watched it explore. Every movement was careful but confident. Every chirp seemed to echo hope. He realized that the fire had tested him, yes, but it had also awakened the hatchling's trust and his own courage. They had both survived not because they were strong but because they acted when it mattered. As the sun outside Orbital 1 dimmed into the red glow of the star, Terran stood in the bay, watching the small creature sleep. The station was quiet now, the alarms silenced, and a strange peace filled the air. He did not know what the future held. He did not know if the hatchling would stay or if the dragon elders would take it away. But he did know one thing: the fire had changed him. And in saving a creature that no one else would, he had discovered something human and powerful: the courage to act when no one else would. And that courage, he realized, was just the beginning. Terran woke early to the hum of the station. The red light of the distant star spilled through the bay windows, painting the floor in soft orange. He stretched and looked down at the hatchling, still curled up in the small nest he had made. It stirred as he approached, blinking and chirping softly. "Morning, little one," he said, kneeling beside it. The hatchling stretched its tiny wings and nuzzled his hand. Terran smiled. It was strange how something so small could make him feel needed. He had spent years fixing machines, repairing engines and circuits, and yet nothing had ever made him feel this alive. The station was quiet. Most workers had already moved to other sections, leaving Terran and the hatchling in their temporary sanctuary. But it wouldn't stay quiet for long. Word of what had happened with the fire had spread faster than he expected. Soon, representatives from different species began to arrive. They wanted to see the human who had run into fire and the creature he had saved. First came the station medical staff. They were curious but cautious. They scanned the hatchling again, checking its health and energy levels. The readings were perfect. Terran watched as the creature chirped softly at the scanners, seemingly aware of what was happening but unafraid. It kept looking at him, its small glowing eyes full of trust. "You've bonded quickly," said Dr. Marvin Hale, one of the senior human doctors. "Most dragons take weeks, even months, to accept someone." Terran shrugged. "I didn't plan it. I just stayed with it." He ran a hand through his hair. "I guess it liked that." Before anyone could respond, the hatchling climbed onto Terran's shoulder, wrapping its tiny claws lightly around his neck. It chirped again, louder this time, and Terran laughed. Okay. You're not leaving me alone, huh?" Dr. Hale shook his head with a smile. "It's clear. You two understand each other. That's unusual. Very unusual." The next visitors were aliens from the Dragon Council. They were tall, graceful, and serious. They moved with precision, their long fingers brushing the air as they spoke in low musical tones. Terran felt a flicker of nervousness. He had seen dragons in holovids but never this close. The eldest of the group, a silver-scaled dragon named Orvin, stepped forward. Its eyes were wide as they landed on the hatchling. "It is alive," Orvin said, voice calm but firm. "And it trusts you." Terran nodded. "Yes, it does. And I trust it." Orvin's gaze shifted to Terran, studying him as if trying to understand why a human would risk everything for a tiny creature. "It is unusual for your kind," Orvin said. "Most humans avoid danger or act only for self-interest." Terran shook his head. "I didn't think about interest. I heard it crying. I just acted." The hatchling chirped again, pressing its head to Terran's neck. Orvin blinked slowly. It was not supposed to be possible for a human to earn such trust so quickly. The elder dragon whispered to the others, and they all observed quietly. I don't want it to leave, Terran admitted, his voice soft. It's not just a creature. It feels like someone who needs me and I need it. Orvin studied him for a long moment. That is unusual, but perhaps not unwise. The elder dragon's voice softened, almost like curiosity replacing strict judgment. As the day passed, the hatchling became bolder. It followed Terran wherever he went, climbing on his shoulder, chirping when he paused, and even nudging him toward tasks it seemed to understand. When he worked on minor repairs in the bay, it sat nearby watching every movement. Sometimes it would chirp as if offering encouragement. Other station workers stared, whispering to one another. They had seen humans run into fire, survive extreme danger, and now form a bond with a dragon hatchling. It was unusual, remarkable, and unsettling to those who believed humans were fragile and self-interested. You really don't let it out of your sight, said Nurse Lila Trent, watching the pair from a corner. Most humans would have left it in the med bay after the fire. Terran smiled faintly. I can't. Not after what it went through. Not after what I went through. He looked down at the hatchling, who blinked slowly at him, wings flapping slightly. We're connected now. I can't explain it. By evening, the council returned to discuss the hatchling's future. They wanted to take it back to the Dragon Enclave, where it would be raised and trained. Terran's stomach tightened. He didn't want to let go. The hatchling chirped and climbed onto his shoulder again as if it knew he felt the same. Orvin noticed. It is clear, the elder dragon said. The bond is strong. Unusually strong for a human. Terran nodded, voice firm. Then maybe it should stay here, with me. At least for now. Until it's ready. The elders whispered among themselves, their long fingers brushing the air. Terran waited, watching the hatchling curl against him. Its small, warm body made the decision feel right, even if he didn't fully understand why. Finally, Orvin spoke. Very well. But you must care for it properly. It is not a toy human. It is a being with its own needs and strength. I understand, Terran said, resting his hand on the hatchling's head. I will care for it. The elders nodded and left, their long forms moving silently down the hall. The station returned to quiet. Terran looked down at the hatchling, whose tiny claws rested gently on his chest. It chirped softly and Terran laughed. You're not letting go, huh? He said. The hatchling chirped again, almost like an answer. Terran realized that neither of them wanted the bond to end. It was strange, powerful, and comforting. Something had changed in both of them and it could not be undone. That night, Terran sat in the small bay, hatchling on his shoulder, watching the red star outside. He thought about what had happened in the fire, about how fear had not stopped him, and about how the creature had not stopped trusting him. Somehow, in surviving together, they had found something rare. A connection beyond species, beyond logic, beyond expectation. And as the hatchling curled against him, its tiny wings stretching in the quiet light, Terran realized that this bond would not let go. Neither would he. Together, they were stronger, braver, and changed in a way the galaxy had not yet begun to understand. The station council chamber was larger than anything Terran had ever seen. High ceilings stretched above him and walls shimmered with soft, glowing panels. Aliens of all shapes and sizes filled the room, watching quietly. Terran stood near the center, holding the hatchling, who chirped softly in his arms. Its wings twitched as if sensing the tension around them. Why did you risk your life for a hatchling? Asked one of the council members, a tall, green-skinned being with wide eyes. Its voice was calm but filled with curiosity. Terran looked around at the room full of judges, scientists, and dragon representatives. He swallowed, trying to find the right words. Because it was alive. Because it needed me. And because I couldn't just leave it. A murmur ran through the chamber. Aliens whispered to one another. Many of them could not understand his reasoning. Humans rarely acted like this, at least in ways others could see. Most species calculated risk and reward before helping another. Humans did not always follow that rule. The eldest dragon, Orvin, stepped forward. Its silver scales caught the light as it moved. It is unusual, Orvin said, voice calm and serious. Your species does not often act for the sake of another life. Why is this different? Terran looked down at the hatchling, who had rested its small head against his chest. I don't know why it's different, he admitted. I just heard it crying and I went. Another council member, a short, blue alien with 6 arms, frowned. Your actions are reckless. You put yourself and others in danger. You could have died, human. I know, Terran said. But I didn't care. Some things Some lives are worth the risk. He tightened his hold on the hatchling. I didn't think about rules or danger. I just knew I had to act. A long silence followed. The council members exchanged glances. They had expected excuses, calculations, or hesitation. Not honesty. Not courage without a reason beyond compassion. Orvin studied Terran for a long moment. It seems your species does not always measure value the way others do, the elder dragon said slowly. You acted without expectation. You acted because you felt it was right. That is unusual. Terran nodded. It felt right. The council murmured again. Some whispered words of disbelief, others of admiration. Terran realized that the galaxy had never truly seen humans. They had seen humans fight wars, invent machines, and explore space, but they had never seen a human act purely for the sake of another living being. Perhaps, said another alien judge, a tall being with glowing eyes, humans have qualities we cannot measure. You ran into fire when others fled. You saved a creature that others considered insignificant. Yet it is alive and healthy because of you. Terran smiled faintly, looking down at the hatchling. I didn't think about being special. I just acted. Orvin blinked slowly, a gesture that seemed like thought. It seems the galaxy has underestimated humans. Perhaps we have been blind to something important. A human representative from another section of the station stepped forward. Terran did what no one else would. He risked himself without hesitation. And he succeeded. The council continued to discuss quietly, whispering among themselves. Terran watched the hatchling stretch its wings, tiny scales glowing softly. It had been quiet for hours, yet it never left his side. Somehow the creature's calm trust made him feel braver. He realized that the hatchling was teaching him too, patience, awareness, and courage without doubt. You have formed a bond that is stronger than most would understand, Orvin continued. This connection is remarkable. Not only for the hatchling but for you, human. You have demonstrated qualities we did not expect. Terran nodded, still holding the hatchling carefully. I guess that's what humans do. Sometimes we do what others think is impossible. Sometimes we run toward danger instead of away from it. The council fell silent. Terran could feel eyes on him from every corner of the room. They were curious, confused, and maybe even a little impressed. He didn't care about their judgment. He cared about the hatchling, safe in his arms, trusting him completely. Finally, Orvin spoke again. It seems we must reconsider our assumptions about your kind. You act with empathy, courage, and determination. These are not traits we have often witnessed in humans. Perhaps the galaxy has judged your species unfairly. Terran blinked, surprised. You mean that? Orvin nodded slowly. Yes. You have shown that humans can act in ways that are not predicted by logic or fear. That is valuable. Terran smiled faintly. I didn't do it to prove anything. I just wanted to help. The hatchling chirped softly, pressing its tiny head against his chest. Terran realized that this small creature had changed the way the galaxy saw him, and maybe even the way it saw humans as a whole. Something as simple as caring, something as ordinary as running into fire for a crying hatchling, had made others reconsider their beliefs. As the council began to disperse, Orvin stepped closer. Human, you have taught us something. Perhaps the galaxy will see your species in a new light. Not because of war or invention, but because of compassion and courage. Terran nodded quietly. I don't know if it will, but I hope it does. The hatchling chirped again, looking up at him. Terran laughed softly. Yeah, I think we did something good today, didn't we? Orvin watched for a moment, then inclined its head. Yes, something good indeed. Terran left the council chamber with the hatchling still in his arms. The corridors of Orbital 1 seemed brighter, quieter, filled with whispers about the human who ran into fire and the small creature he saved. Everywhere he went, eyes followed, curious and respectful. For the first time, Terran realized that his actions had not only saved a life but also changed the way the galaxy thought about humans. It was strange and it was powerful. And as he walked, the hatchling nuzzled against him again, tiny wings flapping gently. Together they moved through the station not as a mechanic and a creature, but as a pair bound by trust, courage, and a quiet understanding. And somewhere deep inside, Terran knew that this was only the beginning. The galaxy had not yet understood humans, but maybe now it would start. Terran carried the hatchling through the quiet halls of Orbital 1. The red star outside cast long shadows across the station, and the hum of engines filled the background. The hatchling, now a little more confident, perched on his shoulder and chirped softly. Its tiny wings twitched as if excited about the world around them. The station had changed since the fire. Aliens and humans alike whispered about what had happened, telling stories of the human who ran through flames to save a tiny dragon. Terran ignored the attention. He cared little for fame or recognition. What mattered was the small creature in his arms, alive and trusting him completely. The council had allowed the hatchling to stay with him at least for now. Orvin, the elder dragon, had made it clear that Terran's bond with the creature was unusual and valuable. "You are responsible for its care," Orvin had said. "Its life is now intertwined with yours. Treat it wisely." Terran nodded, feeling a strange mix of pride and fear. He was no expert in raising dragons. He had fixed engines, repaired conduits, and recalibrated machinery, but caring for a living creature like this was something entirely new. And yet he felt ready. Somehow, the fire, the danger, and the trust of the hatchling had prepared him for this. He set the hatchling down in the small bay he had prepared. Soft blankets covered a shallow nest, and small energy emitters kept the temperature steady. The hatchling explored, climbing over the blankets and peering at the emitters. It chirped again, tiny scales glowing softly in the dim light. Terran watched, smiling. It was growing, learning, and thriving, and it was all because of their bond. "Looks like you like it here," he said. The hatchling chirped and flapped its tiny wings as if agreeing. Terran felt a warmth spread through him. Somehow, this little creature had become part of his life in a way that nothing else ever had. Days passed. Terran adjusted his work schedule so he could stay near the hatchling. He repaired engines, checked circuits, and maintained the station, but always returned to the small bay. Each day, the hatchling grew bolder, climbing onto his shoulder or following him around the bay. Its chirps and soft glowing scales seemed to respond to his movements, almost as if it understood him in ways no words could explain. Other humans on the station began to visit, curious about the dragon. They were amazed by its scales, its gentle trust in Terran, and the courage he had shown. Aliens came too, some shy, some skeptical, but all fascinated. They whispered to each other, realizing that humans were capable of more than they had thought. "You've changed how we see humans," said Lila Trent one day watching Terran and the hatchling. "Not just here on the station but, maybe everywhere." Terran laughed softly. "I didn't do it to change anyone. I just helped." He reached out and the hatchling nuzzled his hand. "But I guess sometimes helping does more than you expect." One evening, the station quieted, and Terran found himself standing at a window overlooking the red star. The hatchling perched on his shoulder, wings stretching slightly. He could see other ships in orbit, some leaving, some arriving. The galaxy moved around him, vast and endless, and he realized something. His actions, small as they seemed, had left a mark. The hatchling chirped softly, drawing his attention. Its eyes glowed faintly, reflecting the light from the star. Terran smiled. "We did it together, didn't we?" The little creature flapped its wings almost like a yes. Orvin visited a few days later. The elder dragon watched the pair, quiet and serious. "You have done well, human," Orvin said. "The hatchling thrives. You have taught it trust, courage, and patience. You have also shown the galaxy that humans are capable of extraordinary acts." Terran nodded. "I didn't plan to teach anyone anything," he said softly. "I just cared." Orvin inclined his head. "Caring is rare. It is often stronger than any weapon or machine. You and this hatchling are forever changed. And the galaxy quietly has been changed too." Terran looked down at the hatchling, who chirped and nestled against him. He felt a sense of completeness he had never known before. The fire had tested him. Danger had shaped him. And now, this small creature had opened a door to something larger: connection, trust, and understanding beyond fear or rules. The weeks passed, and Terran and the hatchling grew inseparable. He learned its habits, its moods, the way it chirped when happy or curious. In turn, the hatchling learned to trust fully, following Terran through the corridors of Orbital 1, riding on his shoulder during repairs, and curling into the crook of his arm at night. Other species continued to watch. Some came to understand humans better, seeing that bravery and compassion could come from places no one expected. And Terran realized that the hatchling had not just survived the fire, it had survived with him, and together they had changed the perception of what it meant to be human. One quiet night, Terran sat by the bay window, hatchling on his shoulder, staring out at the galaxy. The red stars' glow reflected in their eyes, and he felt a peace he had never known. The fire, the danger, the council, it all seemed distant now. What mattered was here in this moment. He whispered softly, "We're together now. Nothing can take this away." The hatchling chirped in response, tiny wings fluttering against his neck. Terran smiled, feeling the warmth of the bond they shared. The galaxy outside continued to move, full of unknowns and challenges. But Terran and the hatchling had discovered something rare: courage, compassion, and trust. And those things, he realized, were more powerful than any fire, any danger, or any rule. As the red star dipped toward the edge of the station's orbit, Terran held the hatchling close. He knew their lives were forever changed. Not just by the fire, not just by survival, but by each other. And for the first time he understood fully what it meant to act without fear, to care without expectation, and to form a bond that could not be broken. Together, human and hatchling faced the galaxy, ready for whatever came next. And in that quiet moment, the stars seemed to whisper back, acknowledging the courage of one human who had run through fire and the small dragon that had chosen to trust him.